Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to update on the Brexit talks so far and discuss how much longer the game of Brinkmanship will go on for that each side is accusing the other of engaging in, before being of the belief that a deal will suddenly fall into place at the 11th hour. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, to quickly recap, the next round of Brexit talks is due to take place on August the 17th, so a few weeks now. This will still not yield any movement whatsoever, as of course there has been none so far this year, other than backwards, of course. Now, from the EU's point of view, briefly, they expect the UK to stick to the terms of the withdrawal agreement, including the political declaration. From the UK's point of view, they are giving the impression that the EU are just playing chicken and will back down at the last minute and agree to our proposals. Now, David Frost, who's the UK's chief negotiator, has said this week that the EU must either agree to our proposals or there will be no deal, all sounding very tough, very inspirational for the Brexit supporters. So, with the UK side feeling that there is nothing to discuss, their stated strategy is to wait until October, at which point the EU will decide that our proposal is better than nothing and sign it. Yes, I know, not going to happen, but many Brexiteers still believe in it, and almost as perplexingly, the reason that our economy is not yet in free fall over this is because the markets are also of the view that the UK government are not actually insane enough to leave without a deal. What is less clear is what the markets expects the government to do in October, when the EU calmly explains to David Frost, Michael Gove and Boris Johnson that there will be no deal without compliance with the terms of the withdrawal agreement, and that withdrawal agreement that the British Parliament passed and Boris Johnson signed into law in January. Now, I could spend the rest of the video speculating on that, but I've done that in the past, and it all ends up with the outcomes that, well, without a major change of heart on the part of Conservative MPs, are politically impossible. That being said, there are reportedly about 100 Tory MPs who are opposed to a no-deal Brexit, but how far they'd be willing to go in opposing Boris Johnson and the rest of their party is unknown. It's unknown to me at any rate. There may be discussions taking place privately. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I am of the view that there will definitely be a no-deal Brexit at the end of this year. I just think that's the most likely outcome. There are other factors to consider. So, factor number one. Michel Barnier is of the view, certainly he stated the view, that a no-deal Brexit will make a complete mess for the UK government's attempts to keep a lid on COVID. It will also fuel Scottish nationalism, something which, again, the Conservative Party are against, and it's believed that Boris Johnson is too, but I don't know. Now, for these reasons, there is reported to be widespread belief that Boris Johnson will back down. He'll huff and he'll puff, was one phrase I saw in the Financial Times, but he will agree a deal that gives the EU what it wants, but that he can still sell back home as a victory. Now, this will be very much like last year's capitulation, where he agreed to give the EU an extra £7 billion of our central bank money and put a trade barrier inside the UK. And there will be people who go, yeah, he could do that. He could absolutely sell that to the British public. Yeah, no problem. But it's not as simple as that. So the thing I mostly always return to, the major roadblock for any Brexit deal, is Trump's America. Not only are America's proposals for a trade deal incompatible with the political declaration, but President Trump himself has said that talks will end fairly abruptly if we agree to a deal with the EU. We will be at the back of the queue for those talks. And don't put too many hopes in the presidential election. The crunch time is October. At that point, we'll be none the wiser about the presidential election, And it frequently baffles me that whenever I see professional commentators in the mainstream media discussing the prospects of an EU deal, they always talk about this wrangle between the EU and the UK. They never seem to discuss the Trump factor in all of this. But it's not just America, which after all might well be in a second civil war by the time Brexit rolls around. A large number of Conservative MPs said that they only voted for the withdrawal agreement. Remember, these guys voted against Theresa May's withdrawal agreement. They don't like the withdrawal agreement. Boris Johnson's isn't really fundamentally much different. They don't like it. They don't want it. The only reason that they agreed to vote for it, they say, is because Boris Johnson said that he had his fingers crossed behind his back when he signed it. In other words, he's going to go back on his promises in the agreement. So he said to them. So they are unlikely to simply stand by and let him fudge the issue, agree to stick by those promises to get the deal, and then sell it to the British public as a victory. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, he can absolutely sell it to the British public as a victory. But to his own MPs? I mean, sure, most of them, yeah. But the ones who are clued in? No. They will understand what has taken place. Then there is the issue of Dominic Cummings. God, everything's about Dominic Cummings these days, isn't it? Cummings, the guy who has never had anything to do with international trade negotiations, insists that we have a light touch regulatory regime. In other words, a system that will provide certain rules, to keep people in the EU happy, but can easily be ignored by a corrupt government as it won't have any powers to actually enforce those rules. And everyone's happy. This is the so-called Canada deal, or Canada Plus deal. Or is it the Canada Plus Plus deal? One of those, I forget. It might even be Triple Plus by now. I don't know. But this has been ruled out by the EU due to the amount of trade between the UK and the EU, which is far in excess of between the EU and Canada, as well as geographical proximity. The EU will absolutely not allow the UK to become what Boris Johnson wants it to become, a little Singapore by the Thames on the shores of Europe. But Cummings is still persisting with this because he saw a thing and it convinced him. But then there are others in government that think we should be serious about this. But until a definite decision is reached by the UK government as to what its official position is, David Frost can do nothing but still just carry on stalling on the very thing that is underpinning all the negotiations. Hence, there is no prospect of any movement at all until that decision is finally made. It's also very difficult to know whenever Boris Johnson makes a decision if it's ever final, because he's changed his mind so many times recently. And of course, that decision is unlikely to be made definitively, while opposing sides believe that there's still time to argue it out, agree, and still get the trade deal before the end of October. Remember, it has to be done by the end of October in order to be ratified by the various institutions within the EU. And if that decision is made, let's say, but it's the wrong decision, there may still not be much room for movement because the EU will demand real guarantees. They're not going to want a light touch regulatory approach because they were quite clear after Boris Johnson attempted to renege on aspects of the withdrawal agreement. They are refusing now to take the UK government at its word on anything. Binding promises only, please. Then there's the issue of fishing. Something that Brexiteers made a lot of, but so did Boris Johnson's government, which seems strange. Because fishing is an issue on which you're on very slippery ground. The issue of fishing rights is a non-starter for them completely. It's madness to fight on that hill. Because in general terms, the EU would probably agree to a basic deal with the UK as long as the integrity of the single market is maintained. It might be a weaker deal than they would hope for, but I think they would take a weak deal over no deal at all. But not at the cost of single market rules. But fishing is an odd one. Now, in theory, we genuinely could negotiate a totally different system of fishing rights with the Brexit negotiations. Absolutely. Well, I believe so anyway. Because the issue, as far as I can tell, could actually be treated as a separate issue. However, there are two major problems. The first of which is that any agreement on fishing rights that excludes EU fishing vessels will mean that French fishermen will be very upset and they will blockade ports. Simple as that. They have the means to do so, they have the motivation, they have form for doing so. It will happen. There is zero doubt about that at all. This is why I've said, British farmers, you're upset with our government. You want to check notes with French farmers. Ask them what they would do, and then don't set fire to sheep, but do most of what they would say. Now, our fishing industry is dependent upon selling 3/4 of its catch in the EU. The French could block that very, very easily. The second problem is that the British side have refused to even discuss fishing or even advance proposals of our own during the half a year of talks that we've had so far. Now, had we worked on the issue seriously, had we gone, right, there's a serious issue here to keep both sides happy, we need a completely different system, you need something that's very much the same, right, we need to discuss this to meet both sides. Maybe a compromise could have been reached, but we haven't done it. Now, when you take all these factors together, you know, you look at the American factor, you look at fishing, which is a absolutely crucial factor. You know, the integrity of the single market, what Boris Johnson needs to come away with politically. It is difficult, not impossible, but it is very difficult to see how Boris Johnson could possibly agree a deal with the EU whilst maintaining the illusion that he has delivered the Brexit that he promised both his supporters and, crucially, his backbenchers. Now, whenever I read or listen to very knowledgeable commentators, they always say they think a deal is more likely than not, and it always seems to be based purely on the notion that the UK would be so screwed without a deal. Of course, we're going to agree a deal at the last moment. I mean, it'd be madness not to. But that is to ignore the fact that Brexit has been driven for years now by dogma, not reasoned national interest. And if you ask me, is there any evidence that we will strike a deal? Yes, there is. Yeah, absolutely. But all I can point out to is the fact that our preparations for a no-deal Brexit are so piss poor. You cannot believe that the people behind them seriously think they will be needed. It makes much more sense. It's a much more compelling argument to imagine that they're just paying no-deal preparations lip service just to give the impression that we're serious about leaving without a deal as a negotiating strategy. But there is an alternative reading into that situation. So let's say that the senior members of the government, just for the sake of argument, just hypothetically, are so deluded that they think the EU will sacrifice the integrity of the single market rather than face a no deal with the UK scenario. Or let's just say that they fundamentally don't understand what the EU single market is. So they don't actually realise the damage they're intending to do to it. Now, they may genuinely believe that the EU will cave in at the last minute. And that's why there is no need to seriously prepare for no deal, just go through the motions. Now, to this you may argue, but they must be being told day and night by senior civil servants who do understand the situation that this is not realistic. Problem with that is Dominic Cummings has been getting rid of quite a lot of those senior civil servants. There's not many left now. And due to the centralisation of power around Downing Street, Boris Johnson and other senior ministers are not really in discussions with very many people who actually understand how these things work. Because if that is what they're thinking, and it is credible that that is what they're thinking, there is a tiny flaw in their logic. So this isn't the first time I've had to say this, and I really don't think it's going to be the last. But ultimately it comes down to this. Does Boris Johnson and the people he listens to just pretend to be mad and actually have a plan to give in to the EU, but to sell it to everyone as a Brexit victory? Or is he genuinely mad and simply doesn't recognise reality? Which I suppose is the definition of madness. Either way, we've still got another 2 months of brinkmanship. That's the way I would see it. It'll be interesting to see what's said at each point, to see if I can refine how I think it might go. But ultimately, there will be no movement for 2 months. How could there be? And then at the end of September, we may start to see some pennies drop. We will see. We will certainly have to by the end of October. But there it is. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.